All right, let's talk about one of the toughest, most high-stakes parts of any audit and risk exam, controls and tests of controls. We're going to break it all down today, so let's get right into it.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? The exam clock is just ticking down, you're looking at this huge wall of text for a question, and you can just feel that panic starting to creep in. You know there are a ton of marks just sitting there, but you have absolutely no idea where to even begin.
Well, what if I told you there's a simple, repeatable framework for these questions? A kind of cheat code that lets you cut right through all that complexity and write a perfect, merit-level answer every single time.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with that sinking exam feeling and why it happens. Then we're going to build up your power level with some core knowledge. After that, I'll show you the mark-winning framework itself. We'll test it out on 2 scenarios, describing a control and designing a test, and then we'll wrap up with the common traps to avoid and the big takeaways.
Okay, so before we get to the cheat code, we need to power up. You can't possibly answer a question about controls if you don't know what they're actually made of. So let's do a quick run-through of the 5 core components that make up any system of internal control.
So this thing here is the COSO framework. Now I know it looks a little complex, maybe a bit intimidating, but honestly, it's just 5 layers. Think of them as the 5 essential building blocks of control. Once you master these, you've pretty much mastered the theory. So let's break them down one by one.
First up, we've got the control environment. This is the big picture stuff, you know? The tone at the top. It's all about management's commitment to doing things the right way. And the analogy here is perfect. It's like a planet's gravity. A strong control environment holds everything else in place. Without it, even the best individual controls can just float away and fail. Next up is risk assessment. Pretty straightforward. This is how a company spots and reacts to threats. A business that isn't actively looking for risks is basically flying blind. The best way to think about it, it's like a Z-Scouter, that tool they use to see incoming threats and figure out just how dangerous they are.
Then we get to the control activities. Now this is what most people think of when they hear the word controls. These are the specific things a company does to handle the risks they've found. They're the policies, the procedures, the real actions. They're the Kamehameha waves, the direct attacks on risk. Fourth, we have information and communication. Think about it. A control is completely useless if the right info isn't getting to the right people at the right time. This component is like the nervous system of the whole framework, making sure that critical information is flowing everywhere it needs to, so people can make smart decisions.
And finally, monitoring. This is all about checking if the other 4 components are actually doing their job. Controls can get old, people can get complacent, things break. So monitoring makes sure the system stays effective. It's kind of like King Kai watching over Earth, just making sure the heroes are still doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, power level is officially up. You've got the theory down. Now, it's time for the cheat code itself. This is the simple 2-path framework that will let you completely dismantle any exam question about controls they throw at you.
It all comes down to one single question. What is the task word? The exam marker is either going to ask you to describe a control or design a test of control. That's it. As you can see, if they ask you to describe, you follow path A. That's all about what the company does. But if they ask you to design, you follow path B, which is all about what you, the auditor, are going to do. Let's see how this works in action.
Okay, let's apply this. For our first scenario, we are heading over to the one and only Capsule Corp. So here's the deal. Prince Vegeta has a bit of a spending problem, especially when it comes to new training gear. This is creating a serious risk of unauthorized capital expenditure for the company.
And boom! There's your 6-mark exam question. What's the very first thing you look for? The task word, and it's describe. That immediately tells us we are going down path A. We need to explain what the company, Capsule Corp, does, not what we as auditors would do.
And now we just follow the recipe. It's that simple. Who performs the control? Bulma. What does she do? She reviews the requisition form. When does she do it? Weekly. What docs does she use? She compares the form to the budget. What does she check for? To make sure the item is necessary. And what happens if there's an error? The request is denied. See? Every single element is answered. That's a full marks answer, just by following the structure.
All right, great. Now let's look at the other side of the coin. For our second scenario, we're taking a trip to King Kai's planet.
The risk here is different. King Kai's worried that employee expense claims aren't for legit business purposes. You know, Goku might be claiming a trip for training, but he's actually just visiting friends along Snakeway.
And here's the question. See that task word? It's design.
That is our signal, our trigger to take path B. The marker wants to know what we, the auditors, are going to do to test the company's control.
And this just perfectly shows the difference, doesn't it? We follow our Path B framework. First, we state our objective. Clear and simple. Our method, we're going to use reperformance, which means we are going to independently redo the control ourselves. Our sampling plan is super specific, 25 claims out of 52. And we know exactly what we're looking for, evidence. In this case, an approved travel itinerary signed by King Kai. Notice how we are only describing the auditor's actions, not the company's.
Okay, you've seen the framework in action. It's powerful, right? So now let's lock in all this learning by going over the most common traps that students fall right into and, of course, how you can avoid them. On the left side here, you've got these vague, weak, Yamcha-level answers that get you almost no marks. The manager checks the report. Useless. But on the right, you've got powerful, specific, Super Saiyan answers that use our framework. Specificity is everything. But the number one biggest trap, the one that gets everyone, is mixing up the two paths. If the question says describe, you talk about what the company does. If it says design, you talk about what the auditor does.
So let's just quickly recap the master plan. Step 1, always identify your task word. Is it describe or design? If it's describe, you go deep on the company's internal process. The who, what, when. If it's design, you detail your actions as the auditor, your objective, method, and sample. And the golden rule that covers both paths. Be specific, always.
Look, if you remember nothing else from this entire explainer, please just remember this one thing. A control is what the company does. A test of that control is what you, the auditor, do. Just burn that into your brain. Never, ever, ever confuse those two in an exam, and I promise you, you will be well on your way to banking those crucial marks.